In 1182, Giovanni di Piero Bernardone was born to an affluent family here in Assisi. His father would nickname him Francis, and 24 years later, he would have a dramatic religious conversion that would eventually change the world. That basilica that you see here is named after him, the Basilica of San Francesco, and houses his mortal remains, as well as being the global capital of the Franciscan order. St. Francis of Assisi spent most of his youth in the proverbial fast lane. He was what we call a penitent saint, that is, living the first part of his life in revelry and in vice, and then converting over to a spiritual life instead. But when he died in 1226, he was so important to the Catholic Church that only 2 years later, he was recognized as a saint and canonized. And that is when construction on this great basilica began. And in fact, the lower basilica, or the Basilica Inferiore, the entrance to which is the door that you see behind me, was the first part of the church to be constructed, and then later on the Basilica Superiore, or the upper basilica, was built on top of it. So here we actually have two churches, one superimposed upon the other, and inside some of the greatest decoration of the Middle Ages. In many ways, what happened here in Assisi around the year 1300 is what would happen in Rome 200 years later. And that is, all the great artists converged on this city to pay homage to Francis of Assisi. And so artists with names like Cimabue, who painted one of the earliest known portraits of the saint here in the lower basilica, like Simone Martini, one of the greatest artists to come out of Siena, Pietro Lorenzetti, who was also from Siena, and then the great argument of whether or not Giotto was actually active here in Assisi as well, painting some frescoes from the early 14th century. The basilica was completed by the middle of the 13th century, and in fact the upper basilica was the last portion to be built, which is why it's much more Gothic in architectural style. Its interior covered with frescoes illustrating the life of the great saint, Francis of Assisi. And in fact, it was the upper church which suffered quite a bit of damage in the great earthquake of 1997, during which I was standing just inside. So, pace e bene, fratelli. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel, Rocky's Italy, so that you don't miss out on any of the great weekly content shot here directly in Italy.